Business and Law, Race Equality Advocates. And we're going to be discussing Peggy McIntosh's book or article, as well as that podcast on Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack on white privilege, basically. So I know I read this article, and I kind of picked up a couple of things which she mentioned that was in her knapsack, her invisible knapsack. Some of these things were maps, compasses, passports, and many more things as well. It's kind of boggled me to think of these things in terms of white privilege. What do you think she really meant by this invisible things in her knapsack, really?
So for me, Chisom, I think what she's talking about, using the metaphor of an invisible knapsack, is really those unearned assets that people who are not of colour sort of count on cashing in, if you like. And I think they're conditioned to expect to cash in on those privileges whenever they want. And in terms of her knapsack, the one item that I think is a good metaphor, again, is the passport. I think without your passport, your options are pretty limited. And that's the one that I identified with. Don't know what you guys think.
Thank you. What do you guys think? What other items resonated with you guys?
I think it's simply about you can't measure it. It's an incalculable advantage. It's not anybody's fault as a white person. It's just something they've inherited. And I think it's not about being wealthy or having an easy life. It purely means that because of their skin color, they have less challenges than black people. So they don't have to deal with being racially profiled, turned down for a job because of their skin color, or be a minority in the workplace. And they don't have to be acutely aware of their skin color on a daily basis. So I think it just benefited from being white. It's like if you're a member of a club, then possibly you get advantages that other people don't. You maybe get to go in first, or you get discounts, etc. But they don't even have to show that membership card, because the membership card is what they look like, and it opens so many doors that are closed to people of color. It's difficult to talk about, but it's a conversation that we have to have, isn't it?
Brilliantly said, Maria. Thank you very much. And it's just the way you said it. It's unearned, invisible, and they don't have to show the membership card. It's been normalized as a system as a whole, and it's just the way it's assumed and not expected, but not shown. And it's just the assumption that's there, that creates a gap between the way like the behavior and the treatments between the people of color and then the white. And it's not something that they could be blamed for, or they have sort of created. It's just the gap that has been created over the decades, and it's still prevalent. And just as we discussed last time, it's not something that you can just discuss and get over with. Then the actions are needed. While talking about the knapsack itself, I would like to talk about the television. She said that I can turn on the television or open the front page of the paper and see the people of my race widely represented. And while that was said, it's quite true that everywhere the representation is there. Recently, there have been a lot of representation on different companies' pages and their website with people of BAM, the Black, Asian, minority, ethnic people. And yet, when you look at the statistics, it doesn't match. It doesn't reflect the image that has been portrayed. And I think that is something that should be more spoken about, the portrayal itself, the way it has been presented to just create an image of inclusivity and diversity by the brands, and yet that's not the true picture of the brand itself.
Thank you. Definitely, I definitely agree with all what you guys have said. You've really gone into the knapsack and how she portrays white privilege. While reading her article, I know she went on to list 50 things or 50 areas of her daily life, how it affects white privilege basically. And she went on to state that this is kind of it's nothing to be ashamed of, basically, like what Maria said. It's an unearned power, it's an unearned strength, unearned strength, I mean. And but then she went on to kind of highlight some issues, in as much as it's unearned and is a strength, it's a bit damaging sometimes to the other side, to the black side, basically. She mentioned some things that it intersects with, interrelates with. I know she mentioned male dominance. She mentioned some other things. It kind of interrelates with racism, sexism, and there are other factors in itself. What do you guys think about those factors? Do you really think that it's white privilege on its own is damaging, or it's not? What's your take on that, really?
Well, I think if you compared it to I suppose it is comparable to sexism and the fact that we live in a patriarchal society where men are perceived to be superior, if you like, to women. But I really don't think that they are. I really don't think it's comparable in that. I think the white privilege is just tips it over the, just goes that one step further, because when I've analysed it and I look at the fact that there is that issue of sexism and the fact that men are perceived to be superior to women, they get more money, their gender is preferred over women in the workplace, etc. But I always think there's an order, there's a hierarchy. So whereas a white male may get more money than a white female, that white female will probably get more money than a black male, and that black male will probably get more money than the black female. So I think there is a hierarchy, and it's comparable, but white privilege is far superior in that it's I can't explain it, but it's one step further in that huge privilege that white people have over black people. It's very sad, but it's a fact. And I do think, I hope I'm wrong, but I do think white people take advantage of that privilege to a certain extent. I want to say that, there are some, that are very aware of their white privilege and wouldn't take advantage of it and say, no. But if you are given that privilege, then you take it, wouldn't you? Yeah, I think people do take advantage of it.
Can I say, for me, it's like an unconscious bias. And I think because of the years of historic racism and the biases that we've all endured, it's a byproduct of that. So it all goes hand in hand, really. You can't, I think it's difficult to separate one from the other.
I completely agree, Nidhi. I think it's the cultural dominance that has been prevalent over the decades, and as Maria said, I mean, it's something that could be chosen by the people, but it just they choose to not be aware of the issue because it's an advantage that they have over others. And as we've discussed, it's quite shocking to see that it's prevalent. We talk about it and there's no action taken. It's just, but at least when we speak about the gaps between the gender the gender inequality that's happening, we speak openly about it. Racism, we do speak about it, but there are no actions taken because, well, it's been going on for a longer period of time as well. That's what I believe.
Yeah, thank you, Alifya. This kind of brings me to a close and to the last, conversation which we should have. Speaking about it, we've been speaking about white privilege has been Peggy McIntosh. She spoke about this in the 1980s, I believe. It was quite a long time. So we've been talking about this for such a long time, and there's been no change really. Do you really think that, the system or white privilege can really be eradicated, can be removed totally? Do you think it's something that could happen? And if it happens, what do you think is going to happen to the system in place? Do you think it's going to crush the system? What do you guys think?
I personally believe that it is something that cannot happen very quickly. You cannot just uh, like you cannot expect an action to be taken and then it would be remedied, because this has been going on for a longer time and it's quite inbuilt in the system. Also, it's something that people have perceived and it's assumed, right? So it's not something that you can just speak about, educate people about. You can just provide awareness and it will be resolved. It's something of a reflection, I would say, on the part of the other side, and it would take a long period of time, but it's just something we need to take actions toward.
Do you guys have any other thoughts, on how to bring down the system? Or do you think it's possible to even, eradicate white privilege totally? We've had conversations about it. It's been going on and on. We can talk about white privilege for a long time, but then what does it change?
I think acknowledging that it exists and recognizing that white people have benefited from it, even if it's unintentional, that's a huge step. But I think the most beneficial and simplest action that white people can take is to speak out on behalf of Black people when they see areas of social injustice. Because you're right, it has been going on for years and years. We need allies, don't we? And we need things like this, conversations like this, to continue to go on. And it's going to take a long time, maybe not in our lifetime, but we need to do it. It needs to be eradicated, for sure.
I agree, and I think the white allyship would be easier if the term were to be changed. Personally, I find the term does elicit defensive.
Yeah, you said that before. Yeah.
Yes, and I think just that needs to be tweaked. And I also think when you said what would change, I think things like inherited wealth that people who are not of colour in the West who take for granted, that's been passed down for generations. I think breaking down the white privilege would make, things would be on an equal footing for everyone in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, I agree. Especially wealth that has been accumulated from slavery.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely, I agree with you guys. It was nice talking to you all about white privilege and unpacking the invisible knapsack. It's really quite enlightening on how white privilege has kind of affected our society today. It's this I want to call it immovable rock, because we've been talking about it basically, and it's still there. It's still happening in our workplaces, in education, wherever it is you might find yourself. There's this atom of white privilege there, and a lot of people really find it difficult to admit or acknowledge, like Maria said, that they do have white privilege. And at the end of the day, really, it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to be fearful of. You have it because of who you are, because of how you look like, and you have it basically. You should acknowledge it, and instead of using it, instead of capitalizing on it and using it to advance yourself, you should help the other side who doesn't have the same privilege as you do, just like allyship, just like you mentioned, allyship basically. Thank you very much once more for attending. It was nice speaking to you guys. I would encourage everyone listening to this podcast to go and read the article Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack. Thank you.
On time.
Was that dead on time?
Yep, right on time.
That was actually quite good.
It was.
That's brilliant.